Hey guys, Michael here. We're starting into our next exciting topic. This week, topic 3, we're going to be talking about internal analysis. Buzzword for this particular topic is core competence. So sit back, enjoy the ride, take notes, let me know if you have any questions. So last time, we spent a lot of time talking about the external environment. We went over these various segments of the general environment. We spent most of our time talking about Michael Porter's management guru, and his 5 forces. We talked some about the competitor environment, and you watched a video on that. This is all part of the external part, or what we might call the opportunities and threats of the SWOT analysis. Because it's external. Opportunities and threats are outside. So, yeah, as it says here, when we're looking out there, we see what's available, what options are available to us. Now we're shifting gears this week. We're going to be looking at the strengths and weaknesses part of the SWOT analysis. So we're shifting our analysis from external, which was a big focus was the industry, and we're shifting to the internal. And this is a big debate in strategic management. Hasn't been resolved, and you have people that on one hand that say that the industry and the environment has a bigger impact on competitive advantage, and then on the other hand you have people that say no, it depends more on firm resources. So think about it. We know both of them are kind of true. And when you go out there, if you don't have any opportunities and you face lots of threats, it's going to be very difficult to make competitive advantage, make any money, right? On the other hand, we also know the other side is also true. If you don't have any strengths and you got plenty of weaknesses, it's kind of like, sometimes I say it's like 2 blades of a pair of scissors. You really got to have both. But anyway, this week, we shift our focus to the inside of the organization. And so the buzzword for this week is core competence. All right? So we're going to be talking about all of these definitions of unique resources, capabilities, and competencies. And this shows us what capabilities we have, what we can do. So rather than the options, it shows us what we're capable of doing. This ties in with this resource-based view. Remember we said that the resource-based view looks at uniqueness of resources. I'm going to ask you now to stop just a moment and take a look at this video. It's Warren Buffett, one of my favorite kind of gurus, management, investment gurus, talking about his idea on finding core competence. He says in this video that he's looking for an institutionalized core competence and how that relates to sustainable competitiveness. Alright, so now that we've looked at that, let's talk a little bit more about this idea of core competence. Core competence is actually a pretty new word. Guess. Alright, here's a question for you. Guess when the term core competence was first used. It gets used a lot now. People talk about core competence this, core competence that. In our class, it means something very specific. Guess when this was first used. 1990. Yeah, 1990. Which, yeah, that's what, 30 years ago? Sounds like a long time, but after that was the first time it was ever used. There was an article that was published in the Harvard Business Review. It's called The Core Competence of the Corporation. And the authors were a guy named Gary Hamel and C.K. Prahalad. And they shifted. It was kind of a response to Michael Porter because Michael Porter was extremely popular and his ideas were exploding. And a lot of people kind of took issue with that because Michael Porter, for all that he's done, doesn't really say a whole lot about how to manage companies. If you think about it, the 5 forces model, it's really talking about the environment that's out there and how to maneuver, but it doesn't really say about how do we put our teams together, how do we combine these things, and so forth and so on. And so this was a response to that. And within the strategic management field, there were lots of people that sort of took issue with that. And so this idea of core competence, proposed by these guys and popularized by another guy named Jay Barney, was a response to that. And all of these terms began to be used very much more frequently in the management literature. Like, how are resources acquired? How do we bundle them? How do we leverage them? Leverage means how do we use them, right? How do we use these unique capabilities to extract profits from the marketplace? It also introduces a temporal component, meaning time. Another weakness of just looking at the environment, it's kind of been criticized as just a snapshot. If we look at the 5 forces of an industry, it shows us what those 5 forces are at a particular point in time, but it doesn't tell us how we got there, right? And so what the resource-based view does, again, as this field of strategic management has matured and gotten a lot more refined, and the ideas got a lot richer, people began to talk about things like organizational learning and how does time pass affect this. Some people talk about time compression, because if you take a company that seems to have a great competitive advantage, say, again, since we've been using it in our first 2 lessons, if we take Apple and we say, wow, they're really great at doing this, at miniaturizing and maybe innovation or whatever, or user interface, user friendliness, they're really great at doing it. Why don't we do that? Well, they didn't just get there overnight. And if you add the passage of time, this complicates things, right? So you have to learn to get these core competencies. And we're going to introduce a term in just a moment, path dependence. Path dependence says that where we go next depends on where we've been. So our path, where we go, depends on our path, our previous path. And so all of this has made the whole field of strategic management much richer. As ideas develop and evolve, this is the way that we make progress in scientific endeavors and move our field forward. And again, these guys were Gary Hamel and C.K. Prahalad. And I put this in here. This is just a little snippet I got from something on the internet, which I thought was kind of cool. The core competencies model, in short, it's an inside out, right? It's not outside in. It starts on the inside. Whereas the outside in approach, such as, again, the 5 forces model, places the market, competition, and the customer as the starting point of developing our strategy, looking at those opportunities and threats, trying to get into a market, trying to protect our niche, is looking outside. Well, this is the flip side of that, the inside view of that. It puts the managers, it puts the workers, the resources, the various things that we have to produce things. It puts that at the start of the strategy development process view. What C.K. Prahalad and Gary Hamel talked about was a different way of thinking about the corporation. And they said that you need to think about the core competence of a company. Rather than thinking about markets, you need to think about what you really do, what you do better than anybody else. For example, Honda seems to have a core competency in engines that they've developed over the past almost 100 years. 3M seems to have a core competence in sticky stuff, adhesives, and materials and so forth. Oh, looky here. We got my buddy here. This is Smokey. Smokey, we don't need your help right now. Sorry about that. If you are interested in that, reading that video, I'm not going to require you to read it, but for those of you that may be interested in digging a little bit deeper, you can find that on Google, on the internet. Just look up core competence of the corporation, Prahalad and Hamill. There are pirated versions out there. You don't have to buy it. People have copied it and so forth, so it's out there. You can read it without breaking any copyright laws. But this little video, if you watch this is kind of a overview of what Prahalad and Hamill talked about. So right now I'm going to ask you to stop, pause just a moment, and take a quick look at that. And we're going to come back in just a moment. All right, now I hope you kind of have an idea of what Prahalad and Hamill were talking about and how core competence fits into strategic management. So what we're going to do next is talk about how do we get there? How do we get to this core competence? This core competence is so great. Fine, how do I get one? How do we get to strategic competitiveness? And so this model, this is in your textbook, in that chapter 3, and it's a nice way of talking about how we get from just resources, the plain old everyday stuff with nothing special about them, into strategic competitiveness. Okay, so let's start at the bottom of the stairs and work our way up. So we're going to start with resources. We're going to step up and discuss how resources can combine to make capabilities. We're going to talk about how capabilities can make core competencies. And when we get to this particular step, this one is particularly important, discovering core competencies. We're going to talk about these 4 famous criteria. BRIS, the BRIS model. So that's a nice acronym if you want to use a mnemonic to help you remember that. Valuable, rare, difficult to imitate, without substitutes. That's the criteria. If we have a core competence that meets these 4 criteria, we have a core competence. Once we have our core competence, we're going to introduce something called a value chain. What Prahalad and Hamill and core competency strategic management researchers talk about is you got to protect that core competence. Those are the family jewels. That's, the crown jewels. You got to make sure you protect that with everything that you have. And other stuff is peripheral. If somebody else can do it better, if they can do it cheaper, then you go ahead and outsource. And we're going to talk about, hopefully if that works out, we'll have the competitive advantage, and the ultimate, the holy grail, is the strategic competitiveness. So let's get her started. Resources. I used to teach econ, and we talked a lot about resources: land, labor, capital. Sometimes we call it managerial talent or entrepreneurial ability. And this is just the stuff. It could be a truck, it could be a person, it could be, in this generic sense of the term resources, it, just like this says, covers a broad spectrum of individual, social, and organizational phenomena. It's the bottom of the ladder, the bottom rung on the ladder that we first start off with. And if a company just has resources, then almost by definition, are they going to be making a profit? Well, they might. We don't know, right? Are they going to be making above normal profit? Probably not. Right? So, examples are things like capital equipment, skills of employees. You might have heard about brand name capital. So, it could be brand names, it could be financial resources, it could be talent, anything that something that we use to produce something else. It's anything that would show up on the expense side of your balance sheet. And then some. You might have a self-employed person running a business, and he or she may not be paying themselves a salary. Well, we have to count that in terms of opportunity costs. So it's all these things, this capital equipment, land, labor, whatever, that's being used to use these business services. Sometimes we talk about tangible versus intangible. Examples of tangible, we think of that as something that we could touch, right? This table is done. Actually, I know we got several accounting majors in this class. It depends more, for our definition, something that you can accurately put a value on. So we've got tangible resources, it could be financial, organizational, physical, technological. The intangible resources are things that we can't touch. Like this idea that I'm having. Can't touch that. It's intangible. But again, just like we said for this class, tangible and intangible, for this class, we mean things that would have a difficult time putting an accurate value on. Such as knowledge, trust, skills. How do you value those things? We know they're extremely important. Culture. We know that culture is very, very important. But it's hard to put a value on culture. Brand name, perceptions of quality, positive reputation with stakeholders, all those things are extremely important, but hard to put a value on. So my question to you is, in terms of a core competence, which is more important? Tangible resources, things that are easy to value and easy to put an accurate value on the balance sheet, or intangible resources, things that are difficult. We know that they're important, we know they're valuable, we know that they really exist, but it's hard to put a value on them. So what do you think? Yeah, you might have guessed it. In a knowledge economy where we don't want others to figure out how we're doing things, the intangible resources are taking an increasingly important position in a company's advantage. And not only that, but it's growing over time. In fact, if you decide to get an accounting PhD, one area that's currently kind of a topic is, how do we put a value on intangible assets? That's really hard, and so accountants are working hard on that. Because what's happened is, over time, let's say a publicly traded company, you've got what the company's worth, and then you've got the assets that are on the books. Well, there's a greater and greater divergence between those two over time, because they're still correlated, of course, because we know that some things are valuable. We try to value these intangible resources, but it's becoming more and more difficult. As those things become more important, they're more difficult to imitate, and so that divergence, again, between the equity in the company and the assets of the company, it's getting harder and harder to correlate those two in today's modern and knowledge-based economy. Next one. Well, we're moving up our ladder here. Capabilities. Capabilities are the capacity to do things. Think of the term capable. Think about when we say, okay, I have a driver. That's a resource. I have a truck. That's a resource. Separately, they're just resources. If we combine them, we now have a capability. We have the ability to deliver a product. So, just like this is, the firm's capacity to deploy those resources to achieve something, and a lot of times, especially the core competencies, the ones that really become important, those we have to put into effect that time component, and we also have to put into effect that unique part. Sometimes the term that we use is proprietary. Do we have any knowledge or capabilities that only we have access to? copyrights and patents can be used to try to protect proprietary knowledge. But then again, just keeping secrets can also do that as well. So, and this depends on these capabilities, especially the ones that make the core competence, and lies in the unique skills and knowledge of a firm's employees, and they become important, which we're going to jump to next. The next topic we're going to talk about whenever they form that core competence and those valuable, rare, difficult to imitate, and without substitute capabilities. So here's a question for you. Can technology provide a competitive advantage? How many people say yes? How many people say no? How many people say it depends? Actually, this is kind of a trick question. There are different types of technology. There's regular old technology that's kind of what we might say off the shelf that anybody can purchase. But then there's maybe this other type of technology. We could say proprietary technology. We could say tacit knowledge, or technology that's integrated in some unique way. So it's kind of a tricky question. That the answer is that yes and no. Okay, so how's that? How's that for your exam question? Yes and no. No, it can't if it's just off-the-shelf technology. Yes, it can if it's some kind of special technology or it's used in some way that's proprietary or integrated with other factors within an organization in a unique way that other firms cannot imitate. All right? So, yeah, I got a story to share about that. Back when I was in Hong Kong, I used to be at the Chinese University of Hong Kong, and we had something that was called the MOOT MBA Business Plan Competition. So anyway, cut to the heart of the story. I got to meet a lot of venture capitalists. They invited me to come down as a professor to be one of the judges, but I got to meet some managers and venture capitalists. I met this really cool guy from the Philippines, and he was a venture capitalist. What venture capitalists do is they spend all of their time searching for a great team, a great idea, a core competence, some organization that has some sort of hook. And like Warren Buffett just said, they're looking for somebody that has a hook that's somehow institutionalized, and they're able to take advantage of that. And he said, it never fails. Somebody always comes up to me and says, hey, we've got the fastest computer on the market, or we've got this new delivery system that we just purchased from such and such, so we're going to dominate this market. And he says, that doesn't matter, right? That type of technology doesn't matter, because if they've got this type of technology, anybody can have this type of technology. He says, this is off-the-shelf technology. I don't care about that. In fact, he said what he's looking for more than anything else, even more than the idea. Of course, the idea is important, but he said that he's looking for a group of people that seems to work good together, that seem committed, that seem they're going to stick with this, because usually when a product is started, a company is started, it evolves, it goes in different directions, and so it might start going one way and then take off into a completely different direction. Our Palapod company, our living case that you guys are all working on, is a good example of that. It takes several iterations, and it's a iterative process, a give and take. You take 2 steps forward and 1 step back. So you've got to have a team of people that's committed, that knows what they're doing, is going to see it through. That's much more important than, say, Palapod would say, hey, we've got the greatest server in the world. So what? Technology is constantly changing. Off-the-shelf technology is something that can easily be imitated. So just to drive that point home. Alright. Next one. This is the big one. This is the core. This is the buzzword for this whole topic. This whole topic 3. The overly used word core competence. Core competence means something quite specific. We're going to say that core competence is a capability, which we just talked about, right? It's a capability that meets 4 criteria. Valuable, rare, difficult to imitate without substitutes. If you have that, you have a core competence. So I'm going to ask you to pause right now. I'm also going to pause and watch this video again. I've watched it before, but I'm going to watch it again. Alright, so that was kind of a cool little video, the Marketing Minute. I like that. He's kind of saying what Michael Porter said earlier. You don't necessarily want to be the best, but you want to make yourself different. Strategies about doing something different. How to identify your core competence. The 4 criteria, you're going to have to know these. You're going to have a cheat sheet, a crib sheet. So we're going to say the VRIS model. Valuable, rare, costly, imitate, and without substitutes. These are the 4 criteria of a sustainable competitive advantage. Let's talk about these 4. Valuable. Well, you might be able to do something, but people have got to be willing to pay for it. If people are not willing to pay for it, then it's not. You might be really good at creating cut glass spittoons, for example. Well, it's not going to do you much good because nobody really wants a cut glass spittoon. Rare, pretty straightforward. Rare capabilities means that few people have them. Difficult to imitate. This one's tricky. We're going to spend a lot more time talking about this one. We're not going to do it on this lesson. I'm about ready to stop. We're just about through for this particular lesson. But I want you to think about this for next lesson, which I'm going to post next class period, which will be Thursday. I want you to think about these costly to imitate or difficult to imitate capabilities. What might make a core competence difficult to imitate? Because if you're doing something and you're making money, hey, somebody else is going to try to imitate it. What keeps them from doing it? And then finally, we're going to talk about non-substitutability. This non-substitutable capabilities equivalence. Alright? Now before I leave you, just about ready to stop, do a slight exercise here. I'm just going to introduce these questions and I want you to think about them. And we're going to start off with this next class period. What's the primary core competence of a company like Canon? We know Canon. Canon, they make digital cameras. I've got another thing here. They make copiers. They make printers. They make digital cameras. They make scanners. They make medical imaging equipment. What do you think it is about all of these different products this company makes that links it together? What's the glue? What's the core competence? Okay, think about it. Next one, what about P&G? P&G is it's an iconic American company, although it's having some difficulties as of late. They produce soap, diapers, toothpaste, shampoo, deodorant. Many of the products that we use every day are produced by P&G. So I want you to think about this. What is it about P&G, this group of products, that it's the glue that holds it together? What is that? What about 3M? 3M, I mentioned last time, I believe, Minnesota Mining and Manufacturing. They make sandpaper, scotch tape, post-it notes, adhesive medical tape, reflective signs, etc. they make that Thinsulate. I know a lot of us love to ski, so we have jackets or gloves or boots that have Thinsulate. That's 3 in 1. What about this one? This is a tough one. Amazon.com. What is it about Amazon.com that's unique once they give you core competence? Gosh, Amazon.com. It's the everything company, isn't it? They produce just about everything, or they sell. They don't produce. They produce a few things. Well, actually, we know they don't actually produce something themselves, but they've got that Amazon Basics brand that they outsource. They outsource that. So I'm going to ask you to think about those things. Next thing, last thing I'm going to ask you to do is to look at this video on YouTube. This is another spin on this core competence model that is called dynamic capabilities. And you might have guessed, dynamic capabilities means a core competence that's the ability to reinvent yourself. A dynamic capability means that you're able to ride the wave of innovation, or maybe even create the wave of innovation and stay ahead of the competition. Okay then, that's it for this particular lesson. I hope that you find it useful. I hope that you're enjoying these lessons. I wish we could be in person, really. I feel like this is, it's a poor substitute for the classroom experience. But hopefully, if this thing lives, and it's actually going better than what I thought, we may be able to have a few face-to-face class meetings. But anyway, until next time, happy studying, enjoy,